Religion and religiosity. What's the difference? Is religion a culture or a mental state? What does religion consist of and what forms does it take in our time? Shalom. My name is dr.KTOvbin. I'm an anthropologist and philosopher, and I'm author of a scientific educational YouTube channel, dr.KTOvbin. On my channel, I talk about modern scientific worldview and about manifestations of barbarism and obscurantism in our time. I mainly work in culture studies and religious studies. Religion is one of my main interests. In our paradoxical time, when science works miracles every day, religion has not died. On the contrary, the galvanization of religion is observed anywhere, an artificial revival of the most archaic and unusual cults and beliefs. The preachings of famous traditional religions is also gaining momentum. A variety of conspiracy theories are becoming increasingly popular. Religious and mythological consciousness is increasingly replacing common sense, forcing millions of people to commit crazy acts, threaten lives, and harm their own and others' health and property. For most scientists, the modern religion revival comes as a surprise. Scientists dreamed of the age of science when people would be guided by common sense, when scientists, not priests, would determine the priorities of life. But it turned out differently. The scientists themselves are partly to blame because they ignored religion as the most important social and cultural phenomenon and did not subject it to thorough scientific analysis. We will try to correct these errors to the best of our ability. First, you need to get the concept of religion. For many, religion is faith. This is a big mistake because faith is only one of the components of religion. For others, religion is spirituality. This is also a mistake because spirituality can also be not religious, even atheistic. The term religion is very old. Already in ancient Rome, it was perceived as a word that had lost its original meaning, as a synonym for piety. One of the main Christian theologians, Augustine of Hippo, gave a convenient understanding of religion that can still be used today. Augustine drew attention to the prefix re, restoration, revival, and the root ligere, ligament. For Augustine, religion is restoring the lost connection with God, with the higher world. This is the contrast between the concept of religion and tradition. Also today, Kentaurism, traditional religion, is widely used. Tradition comes from tradere, as convey. Tradition is the meaning and the way of life passed down from generation to generation, from ancestor to descendants, from old members of the community to new ones. Tradition is knowledge that has never disappeared. It is the obvious meaning of things. Religion arises when the connection has been broken. When people have forgotten, lost their meaning, stopped being in awe, are confused in life, don't know what to do. That's when religion preachers comes and declare then the meaning has been revealed to them and they can restore what was lost, re-explain what has been forgotten. In the words of Paul the Apostle, according to the revelation of the mystery which has been kept secret for long ages past, but now is manifested, and by the scriptures of the prophets, according to the commandment of the eternal God, has been made known to all the nations, leading to obedience of faith. Thus, religion from the very beginning of its emergence is anti-traditional. Any religion claims that people have already broken away from the golden age, so religion insists on its own rules for getting to heaven, to another world. An important point. All the founders of religions claim that they had a revelation, but they never advise followers to seek their own revelations. They demand to be taken at their word.
Sometimes they confirm their revelations with some kind of logic, plausible rhetoric, but the main thing is simply submission. And then the path of the golden age, the path to heaven, will be found again. It is only important to follow the instructions of the preachers in detail. This is how the most important component arises in religion: faith. Faith is certainty that does not require proof. And again, faith is certainty that does not require proof. And what happens on the part of the adherents? What neophytes feel can be studied in detail in our time. Because there are almost no places left in the world where people would traditionally follow their believing parents. Almost everywhere, religiosity is the result of the personal choice for each person. Due to the openness of the modern world, even in the most remote places, adherents of traditional religions always have a choice, even two choices. Firstly, they can almost always simply move to another place where religiosity is not so total, for example, from a village to a city. Secondly, absolutely all modern believers determine for themselves what exactly they are ready to take from their traditional religion and what they don't like. That is, we are talking about an arbitrary choice of components of religion. Of course, a lot depends on religion, region, gender, age, social status, but in general the picture of present religiosity is exactly like this. So, what does its adherent want from religion? A consistent and integral picture of the world? Yes, but that's not the main thing. Inspiration to overcome life's challenges? Yes, but this is also secondary. So, why do people come to religion, make a choice, and become believers? Why do people decide to choose for themselves the thing that not neither be verified nor proven? Let's talk about the reasons for religiosity. Not religion as a form of culture, but religiosity as a mental state. Here is my outer diagram of the emergence of religion in human life. It all starts with the image. This is a reason not only for religion, but in general for everything that makes us human, our entire culture. A person realizes then he is not competitive in comparison with other people of the forces of nature. This is bifurcation. He must either die or become different. But unlike the path of science, which offers an analysis of the situation, or the path of techniques, which offers new methods to transform reality, a person finds himself in a state of fear. Monstrous, killing fear. It's not just an inconvenience that motivates you to get up and change something in your life. Science, technology, art. No, this is death by fear. The person feels already dead. That is why in all organized religions the metaphors of death, rebirth, new name are so strong. When a person is in great pain, he does not talk about the reason. He eats a painkiller. That is why Karl Marx said the religion is the opium of the people. A drug is not just a way to move to another reality. The dope, first of all, is a powerful painkiller. By destroying his entire previous life, his entire former I am, a person receives the illusion of a new life. This is not real life because anatomical, physiological, social needs do not disappear anywhere. But this pretense created the illusion of a different relationship between things. Everything that oppressed us in the real reality, horror, poetry, illness, hatred, pressure, disappointment, weakness looks different in another reality. Unless you are converted and become like children, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Now I am not talking about the biochemical side of religiosity, a topic that Robert Sapolsky discussed in detail. The next lecture will be devoted to this. For now we are focusing only on the psychiatric side of spiritual rebirth. My grandmother said, all diseases are from stress, only syphilis is from love. Also, syphilis is also caused by stress, only indirectly. Our internal state of self-confidence is the main thing for our physical and mental health. Therefore, the feeling of new birth motivates a person very powerfully. A newly converted believer can instantly break with social dependencies, change his life, and even be cured of a terrible disease. This is a miracle. Now he has the motivation of a new life. But all motivations begin with pre-motivation. A new life begins with faith, with the recognition of what is bigger than me, more important than me, stronger than me, except what cannot be understood and explained. To follow something that you would never normally follow. God has chosen the foolish thing of the world to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong, and the bad things of the world and the despised God has chosen, the things that are not, so that he may nullify the things that are, so that no man may boast before God. Paul the Apostle. This is how the contract arises. I obey you as a slave, and you guarantee me freedom from fear. From this moment on, a person's life bifurcates. Duality of consciousness is the future of every believing mind. After all, needs for food, sex, sleep, even anger do not disappear anywhere. But religion puts an invisible cap on needs, distorts needs, and cunningly manipulates them. How does this happen in practical? An ordinary, secular person faces with some challenges determines I want or I don't want. I look at a woman, I either want to have sex with her or I don't want to. If I want and if there is a desire of her part, we move towards each other in the way that our culture has evolutionarily determines to be acceptable. But if I am a religious person, on top of my sexual desire, the truth arises. What does God think about this? About the choice of my sexual partner, about the desire for a partner, about the method and even a position in which to have sex. An ordinary person looks at a tree and sees a tree. A religious person, in addition to the tree, sees God's plan. For example, Thomas Aquinas wrote that donkeys were created by God so that people could carry their loads on them. An ordinary person feeling, for example, rage, succumbs to it or does not succumb to it, depending on the consequences that he sees. If I sincerely believe that hitting another person is good, that society will simply destroy me. But in the arsenal of a believer, there is a sacred anger, righteous violence. God can ennoble my destructive desires or even call for certain actions that I do not want. This is duality. And in our time, it manifests itself especially acutely. Since man entered into the contract with the Supreme Being, a man recognizes his power. Therefore, any religion develops an arsenal of situations in which a person needs to admit over and over again his humiliation, his slight worthlessness. This is a cult. The word cult comes from an old Latin word that means an action performed during sowing. I bent down to the ground to put a seed into the soil. Someone kneels for this, like me when I sowed carrots in my garden. And as a result of this symbolic self-abasement, I restart the natural process, but on my terms. Carrots grow in the wild, but I forced them to obey my wishes and grow in my garden the way I want. Already, in this are the roots of the bifurcation of the world of nature and the world of culture. That is why cult and culture are related words. Both begin with belittling oneself. The cult of holy objects, holy periods, holy situations, holy people is something that is developed automatically in any religion, even if it began with the crushing of idols like Buddhism, Islam, or Protestantism. The concept of the holy place arises with all the subsequent ethics of its protection from desecration. Certain actions psychologically reminiscent of the subordination of various aspects of my life, my everyday life, to the sacred, are consolidated in practical rituals appear, but I will talk about them in more detail in a lecture on biochemistry of religions. The level of motivation and attitude towards sanity are different for different believers. Therefore, literate, skillful, beautifully speaking, and pragmatically actioned adherents appear in religious communities. They automatically take upon themselves the protection and expression of religion, while at the same time distancing themselves from the simple plebs. This is how the clergy arises in absolutely any religion, even in those who claim to have no special priests, Islam or Protestantism. It is these people, in order to make the creed more stable, who create the Holy Scriptures. And ordinary people, due to the respect for reason and the word as its manifestation, especially the written word, inherent in every person, surround the Holy Scriptures with special honor. Despite the errors, contradictions, and elementary absurdity, the Holy Scriptures symbolize the entire creed, and therefore are not criticized, at least not criticized painlessly. The last levels are the consolidation of religious ethics. Since any religion has its own shepherds, pastors, and its own sheep, methods of relationships with the religious community are developed. Also, fences of different sizes grow in relation to external, to almost external, to potentially external. The ethics is a filter through which signals from the outside world and the reactions of believers to these signals pass. This is how theology arises. Connected with the characteristics of the local religious community, theology and ethics give rise to a religious worldview. If, through economic and political means, it is possible to maintain the survival of a religious community for a long time, then the futures of the religious worldview are passed on from generation to generation like tradition. I will talk about the difference between tradition and religion in another lecture. The religion has been formed. Is it all? No, because I described an ideal laboratory situation. In real life, there is an interweaving of different cultures, and not every person is ready to completely immerse themselves in their chosen religion, giving himself unconditionally, throwing away everything unnecessary. A person does not always need a complete picture of the world. Sometimes a fragmentary or situational immersion in religion is enough for him, and the rest of the time he thinks with his own head. This is how forms of spirituality arise without clear edges, for example, medieval secret witchcraft, or today widespread passion for astrology, various superstitions, conspiracy theories, etc. Some brave souls, envious of the harmony and motivation of organized religions, who know the mechanisms of religious preaching but do not want to submit to someone else's system, are trying to create their own alternative teachings. These are various forms of esoteric teachings that the 20th century was reaching. Since spiritual teachers like Aleister Crowley, Rajneesh, or Joe Dispenza were created as a protest against religious total involvement and closeness. These teachings are more amorphous, they do not imply a cohesive community. Also, this is sometimes practical. Since esoteric teachings are more flexible and open than religions, but also aimed at neutralizing the primal fear, they successfully involve elements of modern science, mass culture, and commercial strategies. So, for example, conspiracy theories like QAnon, ufology, anti-vaxxing, fear of reptiloids, etc. arise. Organized religions perceive esoteric teachings as competitors, so they either criticize them or try to integrate them into themselves, such as astrology in the Middle Ages or the teachings of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin or some Masonic practices in our time. This is the difference between religion and spiritual tradition, between religious spirituality and other types of spiritualism. In the following lectures, I will talk in more detail about the components of religion, about religious behavior, as well as about the simulational post-religion that today imitates a return to the ancient sacred tradition.
That's all for today. A link and comment here and in my Telegram channel. If you liked my lecture, please recommend it to other people. And if you want, I will also be grateful for any donation, because this is the best way to support scientific and educational activity. Link in the description of this video. Thank you for your attention. You will make the truth, and truth will make you free.